Here is your top 10, Drew, with no changes at the top, with Bryce Underwood securing the number one prospect in the country. And Drew, it's quarterbacks at the top 1, 2, and 3. And there were a lot of great conversations all throughout the top 32, all throughout the top 247. Let's start with the quarterbacks, man. It's Bryce Underwood at the top. We kind of went into this update thinking, all right, it's going to be the challenger and Tavien St. Clair, maybe even Keelon Russell that could potentially move their way into that number one conversation. But Bryce Underwood, Drew, in your eyes, why was he able to stamp the number one player in the country?
I just think it's what he has done here as a senior, Cooper. We came out of the Elite 11 finals, headed into these senior seasons, and we said, hey, Tavien St. Clair is right there. The gap is shrinking. The gap is shrinking. Now, I still think Tavien St. Clair is in striking distance, but I think Bryce Underwood has done everything to ensure that he holds on to that number one spot. His ability as a runner, we knew this kid was a freak athlete. We saw him do some back handsprings, flips on the offseason camp circuit. He can dunk the basketball. You look at him, he's over 6'3", 215 pounds. But him as a runner here as a senior, that's really been, I think, the one revelation in his game, something we didn't know about before. I mean, he will win from the pocket, but when he decides to scramble and take off, he can create some back-breaking gains. Cooper, the comp we've come up for him, I love this one. Vince Young, I was watching the 2005 Rose Bowl highlights of Vince Young last night. You know, he's out there running around. I think Bryce Underwood's going to be able to do the same thing. And here's the scary part. I think Bryce Underwood's a better passer at this stage than maybe Vince Young ever was. And Vince Young went on to be a first-round pick. The other thing, Coop, I'm calling my shot right now. I think Bryce Underwood is going to play as a true freshman in 2025. We'll see what happens with Garrett Nussmeier there at LSU, but you look at Florida, right, with how DJ Lagway kind of pushed Graham Mertz. I think Bryce Underwood, it's going to be the same thing. He is that advanced in his mechanics.
All right, that's a big statement, Drew, because, you know, I jump on the With the First Pick podcast with the guys at CBS Sports, Rick Spielman, former GM of the Minnesota Vikings, and Ryan Wilson over there as well. They believe Garrett Nussmeier is a kind of like first-round type of talent. So speak to me a little bit more about that, because that's a big statement that you think Bryce Underwood can play early. What part of his game are maybe you the most confident about that he has to step on the field for Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan?
I just think it's the field command, right? I said this a few weeks ago on the 105. It looks like he's playing freshman on EA Sports 2025, and everyone else is on Heisman difficulty. The game has slowed down with him. Another guy you can compare him to is Cam Ward. He is toying with opponents. He can do it with the arm. He can do it with the legs. I just think he's ahead of the curve, Cooper. And the other thing with Bryce Underwood we haven't brought up, he is one of the youngest prospects in the entire cycle. He's got a top 247, 48 starts under his belt, 46-2. He's going to go for another state title this winter. Just a lot to like with that polish. And I think, again, with that DJ Lagway comparison, just in terms of how they used him at Florida behind Graham Mertz, I think Bryce Underwood, he too is going to have a chance to play as a true freshman.
All right, let's talk about number 2, Tavien St. Clair. And this was kind of the guy that we thought could overtake Bryce Underwood. Drew, we'll get to see him in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. As you've seen the senior season progress, this is one of those guys, you look at him, he's got everything that you want just in terms of the frame, 6'4", 225 pounds. Looks like he's got a rocket attached to his arm. What do you think about, one, what you've seen as a senior, and two, do you think this is a guy that can continue to push the conversation with Bryce Underwood for the number one spot, or is that ship sailed in your mind a little bit?
Coop, I mean, hopefully we get these guys at the All-Star games, whether that be the All-American Bowl in San Antonio or the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando. College football playoff berths can certainly dictate. We saw some quarterbacks last year leave early to join bowl practices a little bit ahead of schedule. And I think Tavien St. Clair, Bryce Underwood can find themselves in the same boat. Look, Tavien St. Clair, we love everything he has when it comes to the trade. Another prototypical frame. You'll see it's 6'4", 225 pounds. He's a driving range quarterback. I mean, you just watch him kind of go through drills in a non-padded setting. Your jaw is going to drop onto the floor. He can make all of the big-time tosses. I think he's one of the best in the class, Cooper, when it comes to distributing on the move. He's frequently in control of his body, very balanced, in sync with the arm and the legs. As a senior here, the completion percentage has dipped a little bit, but there's still a lot to like on tape. The player comp we have for him is Justin Fields, right? The former Ohio State quarterback who has had a resurrection here in the NFL. And I think it fits to a T. Just like with Justin Fields, Tavien St. Clair can move around. He can also dial up that deep ball. So a lot to like. Again, I think Bryce Underwood has secured this number one spot. We'll see what happens over the next month and a half, and then hopefully we get them in the All-Star game. The bottom line, Cooper, both these guys are potential franchise signal callers.
All right, let's talk about the challenger, Keelon Russell, because every time we talk about this guy, it seems like he's just inching his way up the board. Last time he was number 10. Now he's number 3. Now he's the number 3 quarterback in the country. Drew, these scouting meetings behind the scenes, it seems like there is a ton of confidence, a ton of conviction in Keelon Russell. Why wouldn't there be? You look at his record as a starter, he's 34-1. He's completing 75% of his passing attempts this year. Tell me what you love so much about this kid, and talk to me about the Jayden Daniels comp as well.
Cooper, I think he's an elite playmaker, right? He's a guy that can feather that line between risk and reward like few others. He's blessed with track speed, but he doesn't always want to use that. He wants to win from the pocket. He wants to stay on schedule. Here as a senior, I think what has really stood out, yes, he's playing for an all-star team there at Duncanville, but their offensive line's a little bit spotty, and Keelon Russell has had to buy himself time. Much like Jayden Daniels did at LSU, much like Jayden Daniels is doing with the Washington Commanders. He's a dynamic mover. It's like he's got a magic rug on at times. He's a little Houdini back there as he dances away and he keeps his eyes down the field and hunts big plays. So he's been excellent. I think the one knock on Keelon Russell is going to be a more slender frame. But with that being said, Cooper, he doesn't put the football on the ground. You said it, 75% of his passes have been completed this season. I think the adjusted completion percentage is probably closer to 80% because there are times when he'll just throw it away after running around there in the backfield. He can feed his playmakers. I think Alabama is getting an extremely talented quarterback, a guy that can alter and change his release to whatever the situation calls for. He's electric. He's going to provide some fireworks in that Kalen DeBoer offense.
All right, there's another 5-star in the conversation at the quarterback position as well. That's Husan Longstreet. He stays in his spot at number 28 in the country. He is the 4th signal caller in the top 32. Has obviously done enough this year to be able to hang on to his spot as well. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked in to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, and there's no better place to be than 247sports.com. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, high school, transfer portal alike, 247sports.com. Make sure to subscribe.